so she can explain how the public members can participate in our meeting. Go ahead, Kayla.
Hi all. So thank you all for joining us on the Zoom meeting. Be you an applicant, planning board member, or a member of the public, it's a new thing for us all. So while we are all here in this digital environment together, I'm going to give a quick sort of piece of information on how you control your own microphones, and when you will and won't have control of those, so you know when to speak. And then I'm going to just briefly let you guys know that when we make a sort of an announcement about when people will be able to speak and how we sort of are going to run that process. When we get to any public comment on applications or whatnot, inevitably we might end up repeating this, but we'll start with it now. So if you are joining us as an attendee, if you are a member of the public interested in application and here tonight not to present an application you are having appear before the board, but you're here to participate in an application that is near your property or one that you're interested in, you will, using the Zoom screen, you'll see at the bottom and in the center, there's an icon to raise your hand. You're going to want to click that when you want to speak. And that's how we're going to be able to have the chair acknowledge you and unmute your phone line. Right now in the meeting, your phone line is muted and you don't have video service. So raising your hand is the way to communicate with us that you'd like to speak. If you are joining us on telephone only, but you are not in the Zoom internet room, which I will say, to be honest, I don't think we actually have anybody in that category right now looking at the list. But if you are, you can use your phone to raise your hand as well. So we can also find out that you want to speak, even if you're on the phone and you can't click that raise your hand button. You're going to want to do that by dialing some commands on your phone. So in order to raise your hand when you're on the telephone, you're going to want to dial *9. That's going to raise your hand on our side so we can see that you want to speak. And then after that, you're going to want to dial *6 to mute and unmute your telephone. We'll go over that again if people have problems when we get there, but most the people I see in our room tonight are here online, and so they'll want to use that raise hand button. If you are here tonight as an applicant or representative of an applicant who will be speaking on behalf of an application, you are in the room and it looks a little bit different than if you were a member of the public. You actually have a lot more ability to interact here. So when we get to the agenda items, we will, similar to normal planning board meetings, we're going to pull up your site plan for you. So Jay is your sort of the planner for the night, and I'm sort of your tech behind the scenes. So I will pull up your site plan when it's time, and we can all review those together. And we will, at that point, make sure anybody who is presenting that your cameras are on and your microphones are there so that you can all speak freely with the board during your presentation. So with that, that's probably enough information for us to start jumping in here on how we go from here. So with that, I will hand it back to you.
Okay. With that said, let's do the roll call, and I'll start. Maria Mack.
Here.
Steve Demasi.
Here.
Pam Rubinoff.
Here.
Elise Torello.
Here.
Peter DiStefano.
Here.
And Joe Murphy.
Here.
And the chair is here. Okay, we're all present. Item C on the agenda is the consent agenda. And since not everybody may have it, and particularly with the public, what I'm going to do is read off. And if you look under item D, is also consent agenda, which includes the minutes for the March 10th, 2020 work session, the March 24th, 2020 regular session. It goes down to item E, number 6, request for extension of final plan approval, major subdivision Heritage Estates. Item 7, request for release of performance bonds and acceptance of roads and infrastructure, East Matunic Farms subdivision. And also item number G, report of the administrative officer for administrative subdivisions, none, and major subdivisions and land development projects, none. Can I get a motion for the consent agenda?
Yes, this is Maria. I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Second. This is
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
just for clarification, there was one typo on the East Matunic Farms motion. The second motion referenced the road names to be accepted by the council. Those road names should read East Matunic Farm Drive, High Tide Lane, and Snug Harbor. Currently in the memo that went to you, they were listed as High Tides Drive, Spinnaker Court, and Windlass Court. And I believe those road names changed, and the ones that I just gave you were the correct ones.
okay. Thank you, Jay.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have a motion from Maria and we have a second from Steve Damasi. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And let me do this. I think we should probably do a roll call vote on this since we are approving. So Pam, let me turn it over to you. And as we did 2 weeks ago, if you could do the roll call on the consent agenda vote.
Great. John Riondo,
Yes,
Peter DiStefano,
Yes.
Maria Mack,
Aye.
Steve Damasi,
Aye.
Joe Murphy,
Aye.
Elise Torello,
Aye.
Pam Rubinoff, aye.
okay, thank you, Pam. So the consent agenda is approved as presented. We're now going to turn to item E, subdivisions and land development projects. And we have public hearing on a major subdivision, Curtis Corner Estates. And I understand that we have a request from the applicant to table tonight's presentation.
Question, is that a motion to table it or to continue it to the May meeting? I was unsure.
This is Jay Parker. The request was to continue it to the end of May while they try to resolve sewer feasibility determination. So they
I think the 28th is our next meeting.
Yes, this is Amy Goins, legal counsel, and we'll note for the public, just like today, it's the fourth Thursday of the month versus the typical regular session meeting date being the fourth Tuesday. So Thursday, May 28th.
Okay,
And Jay, we have also a written agreement for a corresponding extension of the approval deadline.
yes.
okay, so we understand, so clarification, thank you, Amy and Jay, for item number 1, which is a continuance to the May 28th date and also reflects the date, the extension with it for Curtis Corner Estates. Do I have a motion to accept?
This is Maria. I'll make that motion to continue this item until our May meeting, which is Thursday, May 28th. And just as a reference, on Clerk Base, it says that our meeting is Wednesday, May the 27th. So I want to make sure that's corrected.
Thank you, Maria.
This is Joe Murphy. I'll second that motion.
Okay. So we have a motion from Maria. We have a second from Joe. And before we take a vote, do we have any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Pam, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. John Riondo,
Aye.
Peter DiStefano,
Aye.
Maria Mack,
Aye.
Steve Damasi,
Aye.
Joe Murphy,
Aye.
Elise Torello,
Aye.
and Pam Rubinoff, aye.
Okay, thank you, Pam. The motion passes unanimously. Item number 2, public hearing on development plan advisory to zoning, Kingston Cleaners. Do we have the applicant present?
we will. Give me 1 second to get them.
Yep. And Mr. Chairman, again, this is Jay Parker. Just clarification, that was, it's not an advisory to zoning, it is DPR. That was a typo on the memo that went out. I just noticed that today.
Okay. Great. I see Mr. Fish. So again, we have Kingston Cleaners in front of us. Mr. Fish, how would you like to proceed?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, if I could, this is John Kenyon. I'm representing the applicant.
Okay, very good, Mr. Kenyon.
And hope everyone's doing well and staying safe. Thanks for putting this together. The applicant is Kingston Cleaners, Inc., which is owned by Larry Fish. Larry also owns Honor Roll LLC, which is the owner of property at 50 High Street, Wakefield. The property is 1.47 acres in size, and it's in the commercial downtown zoning district. There are 2 existing buildings on the property. The larger building contains commercial uses, including a dry cleaning operation and 2 residential dwelling units. There's also a small building in the front corner of the lot, which contains a restaurant. The applicant's proposing a 4,000 square foot addition to the rear of the property, which would be used for the dry cleaning operations. The dry cleaning is permitted in that zoning district, and the building will meet all the setback lot coverage requirements. They also meet all the parking and circulation requirements. We're here tonight for development plan review with waivers requested from the landscape requirements. We appeared before the TRC in February and March. During those meetings, it was requested the applicant provide more landscaping, a more complete landscape plan, which they've submitted. And we believe there's reasonable justification for the granting of the waivers, and the applicant's proposing suitable alternatives. Tonight, we're going to have Josh Rosen, who is the project engineer, go over the conditions, the proposed site plan, drainage, parking, and circulation. And then we have the landscape architect, Mark Butler, who'll go over the proposed landscaping and the requested waivers. And then we also have Larry Fish here if there's any questions. So if Josh, you want to go ahead.
Thanks, John. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Hope everyone's safe and doing well. For the record, Josh Rosen with Principi Engineering, office at 27 Secundit Ridge Drive in Tiverton. So as Mr. Kenyon outlined, what I'm going to do is just take a quick walk through the existing conditions and the proposal as it's relative to the site plan where we stand today. And then I'll pass it off to Mark Butler to discuss some of the landscape items. So as you've heard, the project's located at 50 High Street. The current footprint of the building on that property in the commercial downtown zone is approximately 6,900 square feet. It's a multi-use building. Obviously, one of the primary uses there is the Pure Cleaners dry cleaning establishment. What we have on site right now is area parking, utilities servicing the building, a substantial amount of drainage, as well as existing one-story building in the northeast corner, more of an accessory structure. Those of you who haven't seen this site or been through this property, there is an access right-of-way just to the south of the building that's shared with this particular property owner and the development owned by Sawtooth Estates to the rear. There's a paved access that goes up in the back for certain businesses. There's also access completely around the entire building the way it's situated today. So 2 entrances. The second entrance is just to the north of the building, but there is mostly in the rear of this building right now some storage containers. Their dumpster locations, ground storage tank, and then there's a landscape embankment to an upper terrace. So in the proposed condition, Kayla, if you don't mind flipping to sheet 3. The proposed site plan, as Mr. Kenyon mentioned, the idea is to add an 80 by 50, a 1-story addition to the rear of the existing building. This would be connected on the interior to the dry cleaning portion of the operation, and the building itself will be utilized for storage and assembly of the dry cleaning operation and its materials. No new retail space is proposed in that area. No new dry cleaning equipment is proposed in that area. This area is actually 4,000 square feet on the inside, just intended to assist in spreading out the overall operation and assembly of the product that leaves this particular location. There are no new utilities other than an upgrade to the electric service that are proposed. There's an electric service on the southerly side of the building that would be upgraded, but as far as any water or any sewer or any gas, what's there now to the building is going to remain, and that's going to satisfy this proposed use, although there are no intentions of the owner at this point to put anything requiring specific plumbing or wastewater discharge in the new space. So when we add this to the westerly side of the building, the 4,000 square foot addition, we still have access around the building that's usually used for at the rear for the delivery vehicles and the employees to go around the building. That's not typically a customer circulation route. All of the parking along the southerly side, the easterly side, and the northerly side of this building will be maintained. There's also some parking that's available on site for the entire building along the northerly property line. One thing to consider that we put together in the top right of this page was just a parking calculation to show that the existing parking as it stands today meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance. But also, if we considered that the 4,000 square foot addition was to be used as residential, which again, it's not, it's a storage and assembly area for the operation. If it was, we have a parking requirement there, and in the CD zone, it's cut down to 50%, but we would meet that requirement with the existing parking as it is today. So long story short, we're not proposing any new parking, but we've confirmed that what's out there would satisfies the current use and anything generated from the proposed use. Mr. Fish could speak in a short time about any impacts with more employees, but generally the number of cars entering and exiting the property and utilizing the building, particularly the Pier Cleaners establishment, is not going to increase as a result of this particular addition. So that's an important point. Another item noted on this site plan is the drainage element. So the area around the building today has multiple drainage structures which capture the overland flow from the properties to the west and the area runoff within the property limits. This set of catch basins and drainage structures are tied to the state system currently. So being that the rear of this building right now is a very well compacted gravel surface and a mix of asphalt and pervious area, our existing building, plus the proposed building, the way it's been calculated, is not going to yield any additional runoff as far as stormwater. So what we did was, being that everything's tied to the state system in High Street, we put together a set of calculations confirming our position and confirming the analysis that I just spoke about. And we submitted that up to DOT. And in the file, there's a letter back from DOT that indicates that there's no need for a permit or no need for any additional drainage for the rooftop proposal for the 4,000 square feet, because basically what's there today will mimic this new condition with the roofs. We've had one caveat placed on the plan, and this was also reviewed and looked at by DOT, is that the configuration of the drain lines at the rear of the building, they connect into High Street now. They come around the westerly and southerly end of the building and tie those drains in. That would be impacted by the foundation or footings for the new building. So we were required to just route those drain lines around the outside of the building, as you see on that plan. So that's not really anything new. That's more or improved as far as adding new structures to the site. It's more of a reroute of the drainage the way it historically drains to High Street today. So as you'll see, the building, parking, the impacts to the site are really negligible for the new proposal. The only other thing to mention, if you're wondering how the vehicles are going to utilize this building, the delivery vehicles that Pier Cleaners have right now will have access to both sides of this building via overhead doors. And I think the goal is to help with the loading and unloading operation, is some of these vehicles will actually be able to back in or pull into the storage space and load up outside of the weather and have access on both the northerly and southerly side of this building. So that's another element of the circulation that is important to note. Again, the access behind the building for employees would still be available to come to the southerly entrance at High Street, as well as the northerly entrance. As far as landscape, that was another item that we discussed heavily at the TRC and was contemplated by Mark Butler from Matunic Design Group. So I'm going to pass off the presentation to Mark, unless anybody from the board has any questions for me on the site plan or any of the elements that I just discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Rosen. Does anybody have any questions, board members? Okay, hearing none. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Elise.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. I just had a question. Who owns the right-of-way that is to the west of the site?
West of, so there's a right-of-way along the property limits on the west that goes out to Highland Avenue. And I believe, I don't know if Mr. Kenyon can speak to that or Mr. Fish. I'm not sure if there's one owner or more than one owner, but it's across the abutting property to the west. I don't know exactly who has the rights and access across that piece, though.
Okay. Is it, when you click on it in the town GIS, it's kind of a no man's land. It doesn't have an owner associated with it. And it appears that there's 7 vehicles that were maybe 6 vehicles and a dumpster parked kind of straddling the property line. And I didn't know if those belong to Pier Cleaners or if that belongs to whoever owns the right of way.
I can answer this one, John, without getting in trouble.
Mr. Fish, can you announce yourself, please, for the record?
Larry Fish, president of Kingston Cleaners, the applicant. That right of way, I believe, is owned by the mill. It's zoned industrial. I have an easement that I can go across that. Those vehicles that are up there are Eric Bell's from Bell Enterprises. He's one of the principals of the industrial zone property there, and that's where he keeps his equipment, has for years.
Okay, thank you.
John, I have one question. I think this came up at the last meeting, but the existing storage containers, the shed, and the above ground storage tank, I believe they're all being removed. Can you, from site, and not going to be repositioned on the site? Can I just get confirmation of that, Larry?
I'm not sure because I don't know where everything is going in the site, so I don't want to tell you something that doesn't happen. I'd like to be able to get rid of the storage units. One is for snow equipment. That will probably stay on site and will be moved up above into the terrace area up above that we own.
Was that the existing storage containers?
That's one of them. Yeah, that's back there. The other 2 are miscellaneous equipment. If I can fit them into the addition, then they'll go. If I can't, I'll reposition them up above also. But that's undetermined because we don't have the exact layout of where everything's going to go in the edge.
So they are going to stay on site, though?
There's a possibility. It's 50-50, Joe. I don't want to tell you yes or no. No, it would be a lot easier for me to say, yeah, they're going. I would like to have them go, but I can't promise that because I don't know exactly where everything's going to be and whether everything in those storage units can end up inside the addition.
Larry, it's Josh Rosen. Just a quick follow-up on that to answer the other part of your question. The tank that's back there, however, is going to be removed, correct? We had planned for that to be removed from the site. Obviously, that's in the way of the building addition, but can you confirm that for Joe as well?
Absolutely. That double-walled above ground storage container hasn't been used in 7 years, and it's our plan to get rid of it off the site completely. The little lean on the back are the compressors.
I guess what I would ask then is just for the drawings to show, even though you are not sure whether you're going to remove it from the site or not, for the drawings to show where the potential site would be and identify that. And then if you decide not to use it, so be it.
That's easy. I can tell you where that's going to be, Josh.
This is Pam. Can I ask another question, maybe to Josh?
Go ahead,
Yes.
Pam.
Josh, can you just, I'm looking at High Street, and having been there a lot of times, I often find that the entranceway seems to be very wide, and I don't know if it's well signed, but I can't remember now. But can you just show us where the exact curb cut is for the entrance and the exit on High Street? I think I know. I just want to be clear. I want clarification looking on the plan here.
Sure, Pam. Josh Rosen again. So the southerly entry where where I first indicated was a shared easement. There's a catch basin. I think actually the cursor on my screen is showing the northerly portion where the opening is, and then if you follow that cursor goes south, there's a curved line where the second point of that opening is. So that width where that catch basin is kind of right in the middle, that's that first southerly entry, and then you follow the property line to the north. There's a landscape planting bed across the middle. There's a section of sidewalk, and then when High Street redid that, when DOT redid the construction of High Street, they left the curb cut. Those two curved lines to the north, there's one just to the right of where it's called out as bituminous pavement in front of the building. That's
Right.
where that opening begins, just to the right there. Perfect. And then following that to the north, past that sewer line, and you'll see the other curved line, which represents the other section of the opening. So that area is used as the in and out as well. They're both two-way, ingress and egress locations for the property.
Had there been consideration of making them one-way? Because it's a little confusing, I think, but that's just I don't know if there's been any concern from the owner of them being two-way, or if that's just a perception of mine using the area.
With the renovation of High Street sidewalks, the state dictated what we had to do. Well, we didn't do it. They did it. They just told us what we were doing. So I didn't have any control over it at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Elise Torello here. One last quick question. The parking area kind of between the clam shack and the building, looking at the aerial imagery in the town's GIS, it looks like there's a pavement patch in there. Is that having to do with the drainage work by RIDOT on High Street? Is that part of the parking lot drainage?
Yes, I had to give them an easement, and they came 14 feet into our property to do the grading that they needed for High Street. And again, I wasn't going to fight City Hall, and I was told I'd lose anyway. So it is what DOT wanted it to be. And in fact, all the water runs right along right exactly in the front of the building where DOT wanted it to, on my property, instead of in the street.
Actually, I'm not sure we're talking about the same area. So this is kind of to the left of the clam shack and to the north of the building in that parking area. It looks like there's a kind of an egg-shaped patch of pavement that was patched in that section of the parking area. And then there's a long area that kind of shoots off to the northwest. And then there's another long area that shoots off to the east. Is that what you were talking about?
No, I was talking about in the front of the building.
Okay.
In the back, that's the way it is. When we put the retaining wall in to create some of those parking spots, that's what it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, Mr. Kenyon?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think we're going to hand the presentation off to Mark Butler, who's the landscape architect.
Okay.
So Mark, I can tell that you're speaking, but you're gonna have to unmute yourself. It looks like you just did.
I'm sorry.
You were on mute for a moment there.
I haven't touched my phone. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I hope that the connection is strong enough. So looking at Article G, I'm sorry, Article 4, the special use requirements, special requirements, and Section G with the general standards and specifications. We went through and prepared a plan to try and figure out where to conform with the special standard or the general standard. So looking at number 2, the street landscaping, Larry started to hint at the fact that the state had done some significant work along High Street to manage stormwater, and it starts to bring water onto his property and funnels it around the landscape bed, which then takes it to a catch basin that Josh had pointed out initially when we were talking about where the entrances and exits were on High. So along that area, we were seeking for a waiver. They were brought up during the TRC meeting that they might want to delineate where the entrance is to make that a little more clear. So we came up with the idea again at the direction and the advisement of the TRC that we would put some large planters there that could be changed seasonally. So there's 42-inch planters on either side is on the property. Along with that, we're also taking advantage of the 10 by 23 foot existing bed going front. And then as we go along to number 3, the perimeter landscaping, based on the size of the development, it requires a 10-foot landscape bed width. The southern perimeter we feel should be exempt from this due to the nature of the existing easements, landscape areas, and the access way, historical dynamics between the client property and the neighboring property zoned industrial. Along the northern property, we're able to achieve that 10-foot basically all along the entire northern property. We'll go into this a little further when we get to transition yards. The western perimeter planting by reallocating an internal bed that is outside of the parking area, we're able to take advantage of a 20-foot wide bed that's about 115 feet long. And by allocating some of that bed as internal landscaping and some of the bed as perimeter landscaping, we're able to satisfy that as well. Again, that was brought up during the TRC meeting to reallocate that area in order to check both those boxes for perimeter and interior. And then, so the interior, Number 4, the property is subject to a 5-foot interior or 5% interior landscape area based on having a total parking lot area between 2,500 and 20,000 square feet. This site has 19,500 square feet. With reallocating half of that 115 by 20-foot bed, essentially we're able to get 5.9% interior landscape coverage to satisfy the interior. And then around the building, it requires a due to the existing walkways that go around the building itself and the nature of the building, it's unreasonable to take those sidewalks out and then put landscaping beds up against the building itself. That is pretty extensive. So again, at TRC's request, we went and put some planters along the front on the High Street side so that can be changed out seasonally and can complement the planters that would go along High Street at the entranceways. And then as far as the transition yards, number 7, and the interface between commercially zoned property like the cleaners and the residential properties adjacent to that. On the east side of Benny's Clam Shack, we'll place a tree. Currently, there's a fence that goes around the back side of the Clam Shack, and they use that for storage. They'll put their tables back there. It's a nice spot that they need that facilitates their business, and then to take that away and turn it into plants seems unreasonable. It's not going to change from what it looks like now, and right now it's not an eyesore. It's got a nice new fence. So there's no additional landscaping there, with the exception of a tree strategically placed in the corner behind Benny's Clam Shack, sort of between the Clam Shack and High Street. And then the fenced area, the northern perimeter west will get pretty much, it conforms. It's going to have a fence, and we're going to take advantage of a retaining wall that meets the 6-foot high fence in certain areas, and then in other areas we're going to have plantings that conform with figure 6 of the landscape screening for full landscape screen as dictated in the ordinance. And then the northern property line between lot 56-3, it needs a 40-foot wide. There is an existing 40-foot wide woodland, which will be supplemented as we show on the plan. The client has had extensive conversations with the owner of lot 96 to ensure that their needs are considered. Landscape plantings have been specified based on the requests and discussions with the owner of lot 96, and they've been incorporated into this plan. This plan meets the 20-foot partial landscape screen requirement listed in the ordinance. So essentially, that's how we went around the property to see where it made sense to take advantage of existing conditions and existing landscape features, and then supplement them where it made the most sense.
Any questions from the board?
Pam here?
Oh, this is Maria. I just had a comment, not really a question. I was a participant in 2 of the TRCs for this application, and I have to say that they made substantial and concerted efforts to comply with everything that they were asked to do. I feel that they did an excellent job mitigating the landscaping per the waivers, which I realize is not always easy to do. And along with the site constraints that they're faced with, I think they've done an excellent job.
Thank you, Maria. Any other comments, questions to Mr. Butler? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Kenyon?
That's all we have for a presentation tonight. Like I said, Mr. Fisher is here if you have any operational questions. But other than that, that's all we have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kenyon. So this is a public meeting, and I note on the attendees, we have some members of the public that are present, and I just want to open it up to them if they have any comments or if they wish to regarding the application from Kingston Cleaners.
So I'll jump in and do my technology announcement just in case anyone is on the attendee list and looking for a way to let us know you want to speak. You will want to use this on the Zoom platform. If you're looking at the screen with us on the bottom, you'll have a button to raise your hand. That is how you will let the chair know you'd like to speak. If you are on the telephone, you're going to do that by dialing, and you're going to dial *9 to do that.
So Amy, how much time should we allot before we move on? Again, I'm not seeing a hand raised or a phone call coming in.
I think you've allotted sufficient time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let me just summarize a couple of the comments that were made by members of the board. And I'll start off with Joe's comments and suggestion that the existing storage containers be identified on the plan. And we heard from Mr. Fish that he is yet to determine if they're going to be needed or not, depending upon once the floor plan configuration is implemented, that may determine if he will need the containers or not. So I think we should, or the applicant should consider putting the storage containers on the existing plan. Secondly, there was a question regarding the vehicles on the western private right-of-way, and the applicant indicated that those vehicles are not his, and that works. We had a comment made from Pam regarding the curb cuts off of High Street, and that was addressed by Mr. Butler. We had Maria's comments relative to the landscape plan, indicating that the applicant did address all of the TRC recommendations. So that sounds good. Do we have any further comment or question of the application, of the applicant and the application in front of us? Okay, hearing none. We do have a draft motion in front of us. If somebody would like to.
John, this is Steve. Can I make a motion to close the public hearing?
Yes, I'm sorry, Steve. Thank you. We have a motion from Steve to close the public hearing.
This is Maria. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second from Maria. Any discussion?
Amy Goins, legal counsel. My apologies if this was already noted. I may have missed it. I just want to note Peter DeStefano is recused from this matter, so he isn't participating in the discussion or vote.
I don't, Peter is, I see his mic is off and his visual is off as well. So I think we have to take that as as addressing your question, Counselor.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't a question. I was simply noting it for the record.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Amy, in these cases, do we still have to fill out the paperwork to, for reclusal?
Yes, the ethics code remains unchanged. Nothing has been affected. So if you're recusing from an application, you still need to fill out the paperwork. And just like Peter has done, turned off his video, that's what I would say planning board members should do if they're recused from an item.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Amy.
And this is Jay. For the record, we did receive a signed recusal form and it is in the file.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion from Steve to close the public hearing. We have a second from Maria. And I'm going to ask Pam to do the roll call vote.
Thank you. John Riondo,
Aye.
Maria Mack,
Aye.
Steve Damasi,
Aye,
Joe Murphy,
unmute.
Yeah.
Joe Murphy.
Aye.
Liz
Aye.
Trillo,
Aye.
Pam Rubinoff, aye.
Excellent. Okay, so the votes have it, the ayes have it. Again, we have a draft motion on page 5 of the staff comments for the
This is-
project
This
at
is
the top
Maria.
of the page.
This
If
is
anybody
Maria.
would like-
Yeah. I would like to make that motion.
Okay.
With the addition as noted, which would be to identify the storage containers on the plan, which would be item number 8 in the conditions of approval. So the South Kingstown Planning Board hereby grants advisory development plan approval for the Kingston Cleaners application, a proposed 4,000 square foot addition to the existing building with associated site improvements on Assessor's Plat 56-3 Lot 97, located at 50 High Street, Kingston Cleaners, Inc., DBA Pier Cleaners, applicant Honor Roll LLC owner. Development plan approval for the Kingston Cleaners application is based on plans entitled Development Plan Review for 50 High Street, AP 56-3, Lot 97 in South Kingstown, Rhode Island. Sheets 1 through 4 dated January 24, 2020, with revisions through February 28, 2020, as well as the landscape plan, sheet L1, with revisions through March 17, 2020, and survey plan, sheet 1 of 1, dated May 29, 2001, prepared by Principe Company, Inc., P.O. Box 298, Tiverton, Rhode Island, 02878. This approval is based upon the following findings of fact and conditions of approval. Findings of fact, waivers requested, number 1 and number 2. Findings of fact, number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Conditions of approval, 1 through 8 as amended.
We
This is
have a-
Steve Damasi. I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion from Maria as read. We have a second from Steve. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Pam, could you tabulate the vote?
John Riondo,
Aye.
Maria Mack,
Aye.
Steve Damasi,
Aye,
Joe Murphy,
Aye.
Liz Trillo,
Aye.
Pam Rubinoff, aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Okay. Mr. Fish, Mr. Kenyon, very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Stay
get the
safe.
shovel on the ground, Larry.
Okay, switching over to item number 3, pre-application concept plan, major subdivision and comprehensive permit for Wakefield Place cottages. Do we have the applicant or a representative for the applicant? And Kayla, I guess you got to let them in.
Yeah, give me just a second. I think we have Josh Rosen, or you want to give me a thumbs up if, can't remember if you are on this application. You are, correct, right? All right, I think that we need to just find Mr. Hallberg. I found him. He'll start his video and unmute his line so that he can join us. Okay, and I believe we have Mr. Hallberg on audio, but we may not actually. Oh, we have one video too. Great. Are we missing anyone from your team for this project that I should be making sure can speak right now?
Kayla, can you make sure that John Kenyon can also speak, please?
Yep, John, we've got you. I think. So we have John, Scott, and Josh. And if there's anyone else, let me know. I'm happy to grab them.
Thank you. That's good.
Okay, Mr. Kenyon.
Thank you. Once again, I'm John Kenyon, attorney for the applicant Scott Hallberg. The applicant's the owner of property at 93 Columbia Street. It's a little over an acre in size and it's in an R10 zoning district. There's an existing single-family residence on the property, which is serviced by public water and sewer. We're here tonight for a pre-application on a comprehensive permit for a total of 9 residential dwelling units The applicant is proposing to convert the existing home into 2 one-bedroom units and then proposing 7 new lots, each containing 1 two-bedroom dwelling unit. It's designed as a cottage zoning development, which is often used in areas like this for infill, which have public utilities. Under the cottage zoning principles, smaller lots would be permitted in exchange for smaller footprints and living areas. The houses are proposed to be 1-story with approximately 1,200 square feet of living area. 3 out of the 9 dwelling units would be designated as affordable, which complies with the 25% requirement for a comprehensive permit. Once again, Josh Rosen is the project engineer. Going to have him go over the existing conditions and proposed. And then Scott is also here to answer any questions.
Okay, Mr. Kenyon, and before we proceed any further, and for not just members of the board, but more importantly for the public, I just want to point out that this is a pre-application. We're going to be seeing 2 additional pre-applications behind this. And the whole reason for a pre-application is to, for the board to take a look, provide comment, suggestions. It is a two-way street between the staff, the board, and the applicant to share thoughts, ideas about what may be required from a regulatory perspective. And again, we do want the public's input as well. So we value that as an additional additional feedback. So with that said, Mr. Kenyon, can you continue, please?
Thank you. I think we're going to hand it over to Josh Rosen at this point to go over the site plans.
Okay, thanks, John. Again, for the record, Josh Rosen, project engineer on behalf of Mr. Hallberg for this application. As the chair said, we're at the pre-application stage, so we have some thoughtful planning put into this project so far for the relative to the proposal on the comprehensive permit. We're obviously looking for some feedback from the board as far as any items to consider to address as we move forward. So I'll walk you through a little bit about the project and what we have so far, and then maybe at the end of my presentation, you can hear from the applicant, who can kind of give you the vision, a little bit more of his vision behind the project. So backing up to the project site, let's start on Columbia Street. Mr. Kenyon's indicated we've got about an acre of land area at 93 Columbia Street. Currently, there's an existing dwelling tied to all the public services right out on Columbia Street. The project site is located between Main Street to the south and South Kingstown High School. What's nice about this project is it's an area of town that is within its half-mile radius, located in walking distance to 2 schools, multiple open space pieces of land owned by the town, bike paths, local town fields, downtown Wakefield with various businesses, restaurants, commercial enterprises, and certainly located right in the heart of our town's pedestrian corridor. So the location is well suited for a residential use, being that the project has an acre of land with the 1 existing house. There's plenty of R10 zoning to the north and to the east. So this is a well-populated area. So the initial plan that was presented kind of takes advantage of the zoning around this property being conducive to multiple additional uses or residential uses, and the land area being fit with public utilities available, a pedestrian sidewalk system immediately adjacent to the property, and a land area that is considered all basically buildable land. There's no constraints to development on the property. So the layout was sought to fit the neighborhood in a cottage or village style, medium to high density layout. The applicant put a considerable amount of time with an architectural firm a few years back, and we've sort of represented that plan in this application and we'll build that plan forward, likely with the same architect. But as you see, if we can go to I think it's sheet 4, Kayla. Yeah, sheet 4 kind of is an illustrative picture of what's been envisioned so far for the layout. We've got 9 units total. There will be 8 buildings, and one of them up front, Unit A, will just be a rehabbed footprint of the existing dwelling that's there. That would be a 2-unit residential dwelling. And then the 7 additional lots that are shown will range from approximately 3,500 square feet in lot size up to about 7,000 square feet in lot size. But on those lots, there will be the additional 7 buildings and 7 residential units. The square footage, as Mr. Kenyon alluded to, are on the modest range, a smaller size of about 1,200 square feet total for the living space. By doing that, we're able to sort of match the density, match the building size of the homes around it in the Hope Court area, the Cleveland Street area, and the Hazard Street area. The utilities that are available out in front of the site will be utilized to service the additional homes. We've got public water, public sewer, and gas service right out along the property frontage in Columbia Street. The intent for the access and the circulation is that there'll be one primary ingress and egress compound style residential right-of-way that will have, right now it's contemplated for an 18-foot wide. Certainly we could make accommodations for something possibly 20 feet wide as far as a paved surface to access in and out of the property. There'll be a turnaround hammerhead at the end to get the emergency vehicles in and out as needed, and the regular flow of traffic in and out as needed. Obviously, with the comp permit, there will be a component of low to moderate income housing provided. There'll also be, in order to suit this development the way it's been envisioned, a handful of waivers and variances that may be required, some of which include obviously a lot size in creating these lots of less than the 10,000 square foot minimum in the zone. We're going to look to try to make a right of way in a 30-foot width as opposed to a 40-foot width. The lot width itself and lot frontage that would be calculated off of that right of way or a private road will be less than the allowable 80 feet. And also there will be some geometry associated with the radiuses for the roadways and the entry points that we'll probably need waivers for when we do a more specific design on the access driveway and that particular layout. So those are some of the things that would be projected as far as relief with respect to the project going forward. I want to mention that the plan that was previously put together that we're going to try to follow and adapt for the site includes certainly an element of some passive recreation, some open space within the parcel itself. And in addition, we've got a lot of opportunity to do some low impact development, stormwater on the site. We feel that the area and the site characteristics would be conducive to things like bioretention areas, some linear swales, and being able to supplement those types of stormwater BMPs with some landscape. And then that landscape will just be supplemented with bordering vegetation and things of that nature. I think the idea is to get a feel for this development, again, that matches the character of the zoning around it, but also provides something useful for the town as far as a residential living in the core of Wakefield. So those are some of the goals and aspirations of the project layout. And again, because the lot land area itself isn't constrained by wetlands or unbuildable conditions, the soils are favorable. The location is that where we're right in the heart of the village of Wakefield and have utilities available. It makes an opportunity to put a very tasteful residential development together. So Those are some of the things that are sort of laid out in the plan set. And again, at pre-application, we're trying to, evolve this plan into something we can come back to at master plan with obviously a more specific list of the relief that you, as a board, will certainly be interested in. And, going forward, we just certainly are open to any sort of feedback or other things that we can incorporate into the plan at this point. With that said, that's kind of the vision of the project right now in a nutshell. I don't know if John, if Mr. Kenny, if you want Scott to speak, or Scott, if you want to add anything to what I just said, more than welcome to.
I'm going to turn it back to Mr. Kenyon.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to just have the applicant maybe go over a little bit of the history of the project and then what his vision was for it.
Great, thank you.
Originally,
Mr. Hallberg, can I stop you for a second? Just indicate who you are, please. And
Scott Hallberg, owner applicant.
great, thank you.
Okay, when I first bought this property some years ago, I envisioned this kind of cottage / village project right in the middle of Wakefield. I kind of modeled it after one that was going on in East Greenwich. And it just seemed like something that encouraged the in-town living, walking. It had the sidewalks, close proximity to schools, and had all the town services. And the way we have it laid out right here, I think the math on a per unit basis is fairly close to the surrounding properties, even though it is in an R10 zone.
Great. Okay, thank you. I think any questions from the board to either Mr. Kenyon, Mr. Hallberg, or Mr. Rosen?
This is Joe Murphy. I'll start off with a question to Josh Rosen. Josh, you talked about potential waivers that would be requested. Do you envision any relief for the rear yard setback? I would have more concern on rear yard setback and areas where you're close to neighboring property owners.
Yes, Josh Rosen again. There's a good question, Joe. I think I may have. I was kind of reading off a list that I outlined, but there would be in this layout, as you see, a need to reduce the rear yard setback on the northerly and southerly property lines. The rear yard in an R10 is 30 feet. I think at a couple locations we've allowed for a 10-foot setback, but if that setback stands, so to speak, in our proposal moving forward, I think we're going to have the landscape architect certainly pay some careful consideration as far as screening and buffering within that 10-foot rear yard if possible. And certainly when we come back, if we're presenting that as one of the waivers, again, we'll try to have a substantial landscape plan that would sort of offset that request. But yes, there would be some relief required.
I mean, I would expect that would be the biggest bone of contention from the neighbors. Perhaps I'm wrong, but that setback. So I encourage you to maybe play around with the dimensions of the house or the configuration of the house to try to, and even if it sacrificed a little bit of the front yard setback along the new road, but try to minimize the impact to the existing property owners.
Yep. Okay, that's a fair point. Thank you.
Anyone else?
This is Steve DeMarco. Josh, when you talked about waivers on the radius, was that the roadway radiuses you were referring to?
Yes. So again, when we finalize how that layout looks coming in off of Columbia Street, there's a requirement that the curbs coming in off of the main road meet a certain radius. to the degree that it allows us the appropriate buildable areas on our lots, perhaps we could end up meeting those, but that would be, yes, one of the areas that we might need some relief. The pavement as well, the fillet radius at the intersection, I believe is a 25-foot requirement for that street intersection at Columbia. Perhaps if we can justify the turning radii for the vehicles and something like a 10 or a 15-foot fillet curve on the pavement, that might be something we're going to seek for a waiver as well. But again, to the extent that we can meet those requirements, we will. But in the condition that we balance, laying out the internal circulation in the home sites versus being able to provide safe and viable access, we'll come back with that, clearly outlined in our next presentation.
Okay, so it wouldn't impact the hammerhead for as far as emergency vehicles maneuvering in there?
The hammerhead will certainly be one of the things that is acceptable from the emergency vehicle standpoint with fire and whatnot, and we won't fall short on that requirement because that's the only opportunity to really turn in and out of the site. So we're going to make sure we hit that right on target.
Okay.
Pam here?
Yep, go ahead, Pam.
Thank you, Pam Rubinoff. I'm just curious as to, are these envisioned as individual lots that are owned by the homeowners, or is it just the structures that are owned and the rest is condo? And so I'm just curious about that whole setup. And then as well for the building where there are 2 units in it. So any thought on that?
Pam, I'll answer the first part based on like this plan, and then maybe I'll just ask Scott to weigh in. The plan itself is shown to lay this out as individual subdivision lots with the homes on them, meaning at least for the 7 single-family residences, they'll have their own lot in their building structure as far as ownership. The 2-unit building, I'm not sure what was envisioned. And again, I'll just stop right there. Maybe since the time this plan was put together, perhaps the applicant has something more to add or another consideration that he may have had. So I'll let Scott maybe answer the second half of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's shown as individual lots, but I mean, they certainly could be condominium lots or land condos, I guess. Either way, I'm not partial to one or the other.
So thank you for that, Mr. Hallberg. So I guess the next question is, will the road be a private road? Are you looking to construct it and turn it over to the town?
I plan to keep it private, construct it and to retain it.
Okay, so then you'll probably need an agreement between the homeowners as far as maintenance, snow plowing, other annual requirements along those lines.
Yes.
Okay.
Steve DeMasi, I had another comment. I'm kind of excited about the idea of the cottage appearances, and it's in the village core or the town core, so it's a good place to kind of test out this model. My only concern would be we have, I believe 3 spaces for guest parking. And I would wonder if we would need to restrict the number of cars the building owner could have on site. I mean, if they can't fit in their driveway and they're limited to 2 vehicles, it may be something we have to look at in a deed restriction, because if we had multiple homes in there that had more than they could fit in their driveway, we're going to have a problem.
Amy, could you, this is John, could you just share, to Steve's comment, how would that be recorded in the deeds? How do you see that? And I'll ask the same question to Mr. Kenyon.
The
To
sharing
restrict
of
the
the,
vehicles.
the sharing of the driveways and,
Yes.
and so there would be, that could be noted in each individual deed, and it would also be recorded in the general covenant that would apply to the whole development.
Okay.
Hey, John, this is Joe Murphy. I have one more question. I wonder if the applicant or maybe Mr. Kenyon can talk to the affordable housing piece of this. Are they intended to be owner occupied, rentals, how they're going to be integrated, and the as far as the size being appropriate to the rest of the buildings? Just a little discussion on that piece of it, please.
Thank you. It's John Kenyon. I'm going to have Scott answer the question. They are proposing three of the properties be designated as affordable with, I believe, 2 at 80% and 1 at 120%. But I'll have Scott go over the whether it's going to be owner occupied or rental.
Okay, thank you, John. The existing structure that would be converted into a two-family would be held as one unit, not separated within. So whoever owns it would inherit the deed restriction placed on that. So it would be, I guess it could be an occupant in there, but I would not. That's the question.
Is the intent on the two-family to be rentals? Is that why it's at 80% rather than the 120? Is that why you have two at 80%?
Well, it could be an owner occupant, somebody who could qualify to buy it certainly could live in one portion of it, one of the units.
But that's the two that is 80% is the existing building.
80, right?
Okay.
We brought this before affordable housing some years ago, and that was there. That's how we arrived at.
And what's the size of the existing building, and what would be the size of those units compared to the proposed new structures?
I don't know the square footage off the top of my head. If I had to guess, I'd say it's 1,500 feet. The total number as it is today.
Josh, I'll just jump in real quick. The existing dwelling is 800 square foot, but 2 stories. And it does have a detached garage out there too as well, but the detached garage will be removed. But Joe, to answer the question, it's 2 stories, 800 square foot footprint. So about 1,600 total.
Okay.
This is Maria. Just a couple of thoughts, since this is an exchange of information. It's interesting that a cottage type zone approach is being taken because we've been discussing that for some time. I'm not sure if Mr. Hallberg has had a chance to look at sort of some of the draft conversations that we've had in previous work sessions. But thoughts along those lines is obviously, since we don't have any kind of ordinance that allows for cottage zoning at this point, a comprehensive permit is the only mechanism by which this can happen. So thoughts relative to that are, one, be sure to talk to the neighbors. Make sure you get the stormwater right. Mr. Hallberg alluded to the Green Street cottages, which was the first one in the state. They, of course, were not a terribly flat topography on that site, as this one is, but make sure you get the stormwater right. And as this progresses, it certainly comports with some of the goals that we have in our comprehensive plan relative to affordable housing. And perhaps this can progress concurrently with our conversation about cottage zoning as well.
Thank you, Maria. Those good comments. I want to be mindful that we do have some public members that are participating in this particular meeting. And so with the help of Kayla, I want to see if you could see if you could get somebody to raise their hand or to acknowledge if they would like to comment or provide or ask a question.
Sure, John, I will point out to you that it looks as though an attendee, Miss Tamara Faust, has her hand raised. I can give her permission to speak if we'd like to hear from her now.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. So Ms. Faust, hold on one moment and we should be able to get you set up here. We might have to have you unmute on your end too. We're still sort of double checking to see whether or not it takes both of us unmuting you or just the one, but 1 second here. Okay, Ms. Faust, do we have you?
I think you do.
We do.
You have me. Okay, great.
Okay, can I just, before you get started, just indicate a full name and your address, please?
Absolutely. My name is Tamara Faust, and I live at 82 Cleveland Street. So you can see my house on the top right portion of the picture here with a little, looks like a bullseye on my house. So I am excited to see that there's some development happening in Wakefield. I'm a strong supporter of affordable housing. I think it's great to have all sorts of folks coming into town. I am a little concerned about, and curious of what's happening to our backyard, or who our new neighbors may be. So I have one, I wanted to support the architect. I'm excited to see what DPA has in store for the future of this space, but then also want to just put out into the room that I'm concerned about drainage, light pollution, and also the density of the location. We live on a 1/4 acre and it's tiny, and it just makes me feel for some of the people who might want a little bit more space to feel privacy and perhaps to just move around in their yards. So I'm excited for this, but also cautious to move forward with what it currently looks like.
Thank you. And I
don't know if that was choppy. My husband just texted me from upstairs that it was choppy, so sorry.
I'm sorry, do you have another comment?
No. Could you hear me?
No.
Oh.
I know, we heard your comments. I thought at the very end, you said something else that.
I just didn't know if it was choppy, if you were able to hear it or not.
I heard you fine. I think everybody did.
Okay.
So thank you. So your concerns are valid. And I think you heard one of the board members, kind of mirror that concern, which is stormwater management. Yeah. And as well as making sure that the applicant talks to the neighbors. You're one.
Thank you.
I guess the big question is, and I'm going to ask Mr. Kenyon to make note of that. He has your name, your address. I think if you could provide your contact information to Kayla, in the light of the fact that, we're not in a public, we're not in a town hall where we can see each other and trade off on this information. I just ask that you provide your contact info to Kayla and or Jay Parker as well. And so that at least the applicant and also the applicant's attorney and engineer can have that dialogue with you.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much, Ms. Faust. Do we have, Kayla, do we have anybody else?
So at this moment, we do not have any other members of the public with their hand raised, but I'll give one more announcement on how to do that in case there are people looking to participate who weren't here when I've said it previously. So if you are in the meeting and you are looking at your computer screen or tablet and you're sort of seeing us as well as hearing us, you're going to want to bring your sort of mouse or your finger to the bottom of your screen and click the raise hand button at the bottom. If you're on a phone, you're going to want to dial *9 to do that.
Hey, John, this is Joe Murphy. I guess I want to make another comment relative to the affordable housing piece.
Okay.
Overall, I like the project. I think it's a good project, and I like the general concept. As you know, in the comprehensive permit, one of the requirements is that the affordable units be compatible in scale and nature. And I'm not sure how that's actually going to work out with the existing unit. I would suspect that drawings for the renovation of both the exterior to make sure that it's compatible, as well as some of the interior to make sure, to understand what the renovations interior are going to be, so that we can have that finding that it's compatible. That is a required finding of the board when we review this overall project. So we will need information on the renovations of the existing two-family, both exterior and interior, so that we can make a decision on that requirement of the comprehensive permit.
That's well said, Joe. Thank you.
Elise Torello here. I actually had a few comments, which have already been stated earlier, but I kind of wanted to add my voice to that too. I am concerned about the setback waiver, as Joe had mentioned, particularly on the south side of the development. All three of the decks go practically up to the property line, and that doesn't give either the residents of this project or the neighbors on the other side of the fence a whole lot of privacy over there. I was concerned about the hammerhead. It sounds like that will be addressed, making sure that emergency vehicles were able to make that turnaround. I am kind of concerned about the size of the lots. They are very small. 3,200 square feet is very small. And I just wanted to put out there that if the applicant were willing to consider even going one fewer with the buildings, you could make those lots a bit larger and maybe even fit a little more parking. I had the same concern about the parking as Steve did. 3 spots is not very much, particularly when you think about if there's a holiday and people have people visiting, those 3 spots are going to be gone very quickly. I don't know if there's a possibility even of talking to Avery Storty and coming to some sort of arrangement with Avery Storty and seeing if they could, use their lot as some sort of overflow on holidays when the business is not, active for guests to park across the street. Anyway, I don't know if that would be a legitimate consideration or not, but I definitely was concerned about the small lot sizes, the small setbacks, and also I don't know if there's sidewalks. It doesn't look like there's any sidewalks in here, but with an 18-foot roadway, if there's children playing in the road, I would hope that they would be able to get off the road if there's a vehicle coming up the road, and have an option other than, kind of diving into somebody's front walk or front lawn. So I don't know if there's a possibility of putting a sidewalk on one side of the road even. And then finally, possibility of using pervious pavers in the driveways and on the walkways to help with the stormwater infiltration.
Thanks, Elise. And I'm sure the 3 members, the applicant, the attorney, and the engineer are listening. And again, valid comments. So let me, to Elise Torello's comment, and I'm just gonna, and the fact that the decks on the south property line really do come up fairly close to the property line. If you look at units B, C, and D, and if you were to consider eliminating one of those and flipping the buildings so they're more on an east-west axis, the increased length is on the east-west axis versus north-south, that may achieve what Ms. Torello was talking about. And I'm just wanted to just get some input from you with that logic and that thinking.
Mr. Chairman, it's John Kenyon. We can certainly look into that. I think one of the concerns I have with reducing the number of units is if we go to 8, then we probably lose an affordable unit, because then would be at 25% with 2 of them. Would like some feedback from the board, but we thought that you'd prefer a little bit higher density and getting the extra affordable unit.
John, this is Steve DeMasi. How about if you made a duplex in there? Would that save you some room? If you combine 2 of those buildings?
It's possible. I don't know if it still follows the cottage zoning requirements. You'd have a bigger footprint, but it could be something they could look into.
So, Mr. Kenyon, you raise again a counterpoint, which I think is relevant, and also to Steve DeMasi's comment. So just think about it. Again, this is exchange of information, ideas. So think about that.
Sure.
I do want to be aware and be cognizant of any additional comment from the public. So Kayla, if you can, I don't see any hands up in my participants log, but you have also the phone log, which I don't see.
I agree, John. I do not see anybody from the public looking to speak at this moment either.
Okay, all right, just double checking. Any further comments from board members?
This is Maria. I just agree with most of the comments from my fellow board members, looking at trying to reorient the buildings and concern with the decks being right against the lot lines as well. And the pervious pavement, very good idea.
Okay.
If I may, John, is it okay if I share some thoughts?
Yeah, go ahead, Kayla.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a follow-up question?
Just for 1 second. Go ahead, Kayla. You were speaking first. Let me just give it to Kayla, Mr. Rosen.
Sorry. Yeah.
Sure, Josh, and I'll give it right back to you quickly. I just wanted to speak for a second because I've been working with the members of the planning board for a little while on the ways that we figure out how to improve the diversity of housing types that we have, get them to come in different shapes and sizes that can start to yield different affordability brackets just by the nature of the amount of land and the cost of the development and the size of the units on it. And so I just want to say that I think we're in sort of a unique and interesting position here to work forward a cottage zoning application at the same time that you're all thinking about what it is that you want to establish as the norms for cottage communities going forward. I think it's going to be sort of yield an interesting opportunity to explore what the theoretical rules you're putting together for the future look like when you're thinking about them in a specific site now that we have the comprehensive permit before you all right now. I want to sort of quickly speak. It looks to me that I see nice front porches on each of those units that have a back deck that goes very close to the property line. I wonder if it's necessary to have the back deck if we have a nice front porch there and we're trying to create a community space the way cottages are. Perhaps that is something that can be sort of an additional feature that's not necessary for the units that could get you to a place where you could provide a 10-foot solid landscape buffer there behind those units, but that's just a thought. It's not a solution, but just something to consider. Another thought I had on the roadway, and this is my last sort of thought I'll share with you all tonight on this one, is I very much appreciate the idea of this being a narrow right of way. I think that is counterintuitive to the way that we've developed land in recent history, but I appreciate the narrowness of the right of way because it implies to me that the traffic will travel slower on it, right? At 18 feet, that's going to feel narrower to a road, someone traveling along it, which makes it open itself up a bit more to be a bit of a more multi-use area. I think given the way cottage communities are and the density, you actually have to start thinking about your roadway as a public space as well. And this is sort of hearkening back to a comment I heard from one of the board members about children playing in the roadways and whatnot. I think that is largely how these roadways begin to function. They become neighborhood spaces. And so to that end, I will say that I think the narrowness of the roadway is a benefit in reducing impervious surface, but also for the sort of community piece, it will slow traffic down. I would actually encourage you all to explore something, and I'm going to give you an out of the box thought here, but we'd like you to sort of explore the idea of having that roadway be a multi-use space by design. There's a practice recently that's been coming to sort of popularity of these things they call yield roadways, where you don't mark a center line down the center of the road and you put signage right along it that makes it clear that a person on a bike, a person on foot, and a person on the car coming into their unit here or their home here all have sort of equal rights to that space, and everyone should be yielding to each other in a particular way. Cars should move to the side for bicyclists. It'd be an interesting concept. I'd encourage you to look into more because I think there's a way to turn that road into a space that becomes an asset to that community and not just sort of an artery for roads for cars to get to the driveways. And I think there's a way to do that here, particularly because it is a very small area. It's serving a small number of lots, and it ends in a hammerhead. So it ends in a way in a dead end. And so there's not a concern about through traffic cutting through. So I'd say just sort of explore the ways to make that roadway really not just feel like a passageway for vehicles, but making it feel like it's part of your neighborhood. Thank you.
That was good, Kayla. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jay Parker. I just want to point out we do have a hand raised from the public. Mr. Ken McShane has his hand raised.
Okay, before we go to that gentleman, let me just go back to Mr. Rosin, who had a comment just before Kayla started. Mr. Rosin.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was trying to unmute. So appreciating the feedback so far from the board. Just a thought that might help us as we absorb some of these comments and then go back to the drawing board and make some tweaks. The question I had was, we've discussed the 10-foot setback and, specifically, the decks that have been shown on this plan to the south, lots units D, C, and B. We've also talked about just generally the 30-foot requirement on that rear yard setback down to 10. So looking at this plan and trying to think about some ways off the top of my head to sort of tweak this, it looks like the front yard setback right now at 25 feet. Obviously, the existing unit meets that requirement today, and that structure will be rehabbed. It's not going to be relocated, so that's kind of fixed. But looking at to the north, that unit labeled H, I'm wondering if the board, if we could make an adjustment to that unit and subsequently try to rearrange some of the other units to generate some more space. Would a less than 25-foot front yard setback be a waiver or variance that would be more well received than possibly the amount of the rear yard setback that we need to reduce? In other words, if we can slide unit H closer to the road, which frankly, is a condition that exists already along this corridor. Is that something that the board would entertain as being a favorable change? That was my question or follow-up.
Yeah, this is Steve. I was just gonna say, Josh, that there are some homes that are close to the sidewalks already on Columbia Street, so it wouldn't be that noticeable if one was closer.
Okay. I don't know how much, I'm just trying to get all the thoughts down. So if that's something that something that will turn into a useful tactic that we can use, and one that the board would see as less impact than some of the other portions of relief, then that might be something that we look into. That's all. I just wanted to mention that.
Well, Josh, to that point, Mr. Rosen, so if you look at, I'm looking at sheet 5. And so to the north of H, there's some kind of a roof line. I'm not quite sure if that's a garage or what the structure is. And if you go immediately to the south side of unit A, you can see again, there's a roof line and it comes to an apex. So if you draw a line through from the north building to that southern building off the property, you kind of have your line to consider. So maybe bringing it up right up to the dash line, which is the setback, maybe I think would look fine. It would pretty much be consistent with the two properties on either side. So food for thought. It's worth you guys thinking about it. And,
Fair enough. Thank you.
okay. Jay, can we go to the member of the public who has a comment?
Sure, I believe Kayla already brought him in. Mr. McShane, are you there? Mr. McShane, you had your hand up. Are you unmuted? Appears to be.
Jay, I'm going to ask a question. Did you unlower Mr. McShane's hand, or did he unlower his hand himself?
I did not.
So, Mr. McShane, if you'd like to speak, from our end, you are unmuted. You looking at it, you should be unmuted on your end as well. But if you're not, you'll want to bring the mouse on your computer screen or your finger if you're on a tablet down to the bottom and make sure you're unmuted on your side. If you've lowered your hand because you raised your hand accidentally, no problem, we'll let you be. Okay, so at this point, John, I tell you that Mr. McShane has not re-raised his hand. Mr. McShane, if you would like to speak, and we are moving faster than you are with the technology right now, just raise your hand again for us and we'll circle back to you.
So John, I have a question or a comment that I would just like to make. This is Pam Rubinoff.
Yeah, go ahead, Pam.
So I appreciate that there's the park there. And so, especially given that this is such a confined space, we often see that open space is not as defined as usable park space and such. So as we're looking at alternatives to try to make sure that, that there's privacy, that there's setbacks and such, I think that we would probably, that this would benefit from keeping the park as a park, depending upon where it is. But I do appreciate that that there really is a designated park area for kids to play, people to picnic, doing whatever you want to do as a community. And so all I'm saying is I hope that we don't see that get smaller and smaller and smaller so that the houses could be accommodated more and more. So, I know that that's another one of those balances that Kayla points out. But I just wanted to note that the park space could be a valuable place for the community. And we just need to make sure that we we don't keep on making it smaller, smaller, smaller to accommodate some of the other issues that we've spoken about.
Thanks, Pam. Okay, I think if there are no other comments, I think we have done well in reviewing and discussion with the applicant's attorney and engineer. And I would just encourage, again, that you do reach out to the neighbors. In light of the fact that this is a comprehensive permit, it is going to run fast. So make sure communications are strong. And we've asked, in the case of Ms. Faust, to communicate with Kayla so that Kayla has her contact information for you to reach out to, and any other members that may surface post this meeting.
And Ms. Faust, you can find my contact information on the town website. You're welcome to call or email me, whatever is easiest.
Okay, moving on to the next pre-application concept plan, major land development for Tower Hill Landings Annex.
Okay, so let's get our applicants together. We'll say goodbye to our applicants for this for the time being. John Kenyon, are you representing this application?
Yes, I am.
I thought you might be. And
You should have Steve Cabral and Chris Bisho.
okay, wonderful. So we've just started Mr. Cabral's video and also done the same for Mr. Wolf. And for Chris, I'm not going to say her name correctly, so I'm going to say her first name. For Chris. Okay, so now anyone who I just pulled in is the applicants. You've been pulled in. We can see you. You can see us all, but you are still muted. So you'll need to unmute yourself on your end when you're ready to speak.
Thank you. Are you ready, Mr. Chairman?
I am. Go ahead, Mr. Kenyon. Thank you.
Once again, I'm John Kenyon, attorney for the applicant, Tower Hill Landings Annex LLC. The applicants entered into a purchase and sales agreement with the owners of 2095 Kingstown Road to purchase the property. The property is 1.23 acres in size. It's partially zoned commercial neighborhood and partially zoned R10. It's also in the Kingstown Road Special Management District. There were previously 2 residential dwelling units to the rear of the property and a restaurant at the kind of in the middle towards the front of the property. It was Kachina Twist. Years ago, it was Iggy's. It was most recently approved as a Dave's restaurant, but that did not go forward, though the structures there have been demolished, so the lot's vacant. The applicant operates the multifamily residential complex adjacent to this property. On this lot, they're proposing 11 dwelling units in 2 buildings located at the front of the lot. All the units would be serviced by public water and sewer. The project meets the density and dimensional requirements under the zoning ordinance. They're proposing 9 4-bedroom units and 2 2-bedroom units. One of the 4-bedroom units and one of the 2-bedroom units would be designated as affordable in compliance with the inclusionary zoning requirements. Since the property contains 2 residential buildings, it's considered a multi-household land development project, which has a couple of requirements that we're going to need to request waivers from. The first is the 100-foot setback from Kingstown Road, which is sort of in direct conflict with the Kingstown Road Special Management District's requirement that the buildings be placed at the front of the road and the parking to the rear. And the second would be the 50-foot separation between buildings, as we're proposing 10 feet. Again, this is here for a pre-application, so we're just here to get feedback and comments. And as I stated earlier, the project engineer is Steve Cabral from Crossman Engineer. He's here tonight. I'm going to have him go over the existing conditions, the proposed conditions, and the changes that have been made in response to some of the comments from the TRC and planning staff. And then Chris Bisho is here. He's representing the owners. So if I could have Steve take over from now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm Steve Cabral with Crossman Engineering. Oh, could we go to the existing condition aerial, just back one? Yep, there it is. So as John said, you know, the site's a little over an acre. It's previously developed, had a restaurant and 2 homes. We do have access to public water and sewer. Now, some of the issues with the existing conditions are the fact that there's an extremely wide curb cut that you see out on Kingston Road. And for many years, that's always been a concern, that there's really uncontrolled access. And this project represents an opportunity to completely eliminate that access, which is a big, big plus for the area. Another issue with the existing site is that, as you can see, there's really no vegetated buffer or screening between the former commercial activity and the surrounding residential uses. Another issue with this site is everything drains to the rear into a wetland that's on the adjacent property, which would be at the upper left corner of the site. There is a small wetland, yep, exactly. And that wetland buffer does extend into the site, but the entirety of the buffer on the site is previously developed. Now that wetland does drain into the Saugatucket River, which does have a TMDL due to bacteria levels. And when you look at the site, it's obvious that there's no stormwater treatment that occurs. So with the new development, we have an opportunity of improving traffic by eliminating the curb cut. And we have an opportunity to improve stormwater runoff because we anticipate that we'll be proposing some type of sand filter system so that we provide the recharge that's required under the new regs. And plus we'll be able to treat the potential bacteria that's, you know, generated from stormwater runoff from parking lots. Now, as John said, this was previously approved in 2017 as Dan's Place. And for Dan's Place, the project was approved as a 191-seat restaurant with 70 parking spaces on this land. And again, the new project really decreases the intensity of the use on the site. For example, instead of 70 parking spaces, we're only proposing a net gain of 45 spaces for the project. Oh, could we go to the proposed aerial photo? Okay, here it is. And, you know, as you can see, what we've done is we wanted to utilize the town's preferences or ordinances to create the building along the street, the parking in the rear, and we wanted to buffer the adjacent properties as much as possible, while also providing the required open space. And as you can see, there's a rectangular green space. And in our plan, we mentioned the minimum area of 5,300 square feet would be provided. But that space that we're proposing is actually slightly larger than the minimum requirements. Now, when it comes to the waivers, I believe John did mention them, but I'll just briefly go through them. The first one that we mentioned is that in the land development regs, they mention a 10-foot perimeter planting buffer. And on our site plan, we mentioned that we have a 0 perimeter planting buffer. But the reason we mention that is we're blending in the new parking lot with the parking lot of the existing Tower Landings parking area. So the only waiver for the perimeter planning is only at the joining of the parking lots. Otherwise, as John mentioned, we have the building setback issue of 100 feet from Kingston Road, but the lot itself is only 200 feet, so it's really not realistic to provide that. And that 100-foot requirement does contradict the Kingstown Road Special Management District, which does allow the front setback to be reduced to 0, you know, subject to planning board approval. But basically, we've tried to lay out the site, or we did lay out the site in a manner that it really does create a nice livable space, and it blends in well with the existing Tower Landing. And it does actually seem to improve the parking area for Tower Landing. And I say that because there's a net gain of 45 spaces when, according to the zoning ordinance, we're only required to have 22. But we do feel that with the 9 4-bedroom units, the 22 would be deficient. So, as I said, we meet all of the zoning requirements. We're just seeking a few waivers from the land development regulations. And this project really is a big plus from traffic by eliminating the access, and from eliminating the Dance Place 191-seat restaurant. There's certainly going to be a significant reduction in PM peak traffic that would have been generated from the restaurant. And as I mentioned before, with this development, we have an opportunity to really improve the stormwater runoff considerably. And when we looked at the impervious area that's being generated from the previous Dance Place approval and what you have before you tonight, there is actually a significant decrease in impervious coverage with this proposal. So that's really the quick highlights. And seeing it's a pre-application, I didn't want to get too detailed, but I'd be glad to if you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. Cabral. Any comments, questions, thoughts from the board?
Steve Damasi, I'm just having a hard time getting my head around that many parking spaces when the town ordinance only says you need 22. I just can't understand why we're putting in 45. I would rather see that center area enlarged for some more greenery, just to break up that parking lot. And again, it just seems like an awful lot of parking spaces for 11 units.
Yeah, if I may, the real reason for the additional parking spaces is the size of the units. For example, in the ordinance, it really doesn't identify if you have a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, or 4. So we do feel that if we did propose only 22 units, that there would be a parking deficiency on the site. So with the 9 4-bedroom and 2 2-bedroom units, we honestly believe that in the long run, the site will operate more efficiently with the additional 45 units. 45 spaces. Now, some of the spaces in the rear, we could always use like a porous pavement or a, some type of, porous paver type area in the spaces that may be used the least amount, so that we could meet the need in addition to providing an environmental benefit.
Elise Torello here. Steve, you beat me to it. I had the exact same reaction. I mean, that's, even if you had 1 parking space per bedroom, you're still 5 parking spaces over that. And my immediate conclusion was, and you actually stated as much in your in the materials you gave us, was that you anticipate this site to be heavily used by the URI community. And, so I'm assuming that you anticipate some of these bedrooms having more than 1 person, likely a student, living in it. And that's why you need so much parking and therefore pavement for to accommodate all of those bedrooms.
This is Chris Beos, the owner of the property. The reason for the parking is twofold. One is we already have a shortage of parking on the property itself. It's very cramped. We redid the parking lot directly to the right-hand side as you're looking at the property. We installed a new parking lot behind that thing just recently in the last 4 months. And we still are running at a parking deficiency throughout the site. Yes, the property as a whole, the other 132 units are occupied by about 27% URI students, both mostly graduate and some undergraduate. These will also probably have the same mix. And therefore, we just feel the parking spaces solves a problem in the community. Understandably, the green space is less with as many parking spaces, but to have organized, accommodating parking is really beneficial for everyone in the community. And it's really, it really lends itself to the right thing to do.
I think it
For
would be,
everybody.
if that's the case, if this is to help solve a parking deficiency in the rest of the apartments, I think it would be helpful to know how much of this is to help solve that deficiency. So I would be curious to know how many parking spaces per bedroom are in the rest of the apartment complex.
Sure. It's not that many. It's only roughly 10 or 12, but that is a lot. Anytime you can add, get 10 or 12 more is helpful, especially for that building up front. Because we are combining the parking lots, we're actually losing some old spaces, and we already had a parking deficiency. So, it really helps the parking and the flow of traffic work much better.
Right. I think it would be instructive to know how many bedrooms are in the rest of the complex.
Sure.
And how many parking spaces are currently existing for those bedrooms?
Yep.
Just to give us an idea, do you currently have 1.5 parking spaces per unit and therefore you have a deficiency, or do you have 3?
Yeah.
And kind of get an idea of the demand, because you are on a bus route too.
Yeah.
And I would hope that if you have a lot of undergrads and grad students living there, that maybe they, not all of them are even going to own a car.
Yeah, we're hoping so also, but I think at least in the near future, we're probably going to be more into their car than they are buses. But we're hopeful also. We did create a sidewalk to the bus entranceway in the front of from this project, encouraging that.
This is Maria. I agree with Steve and Elise's comments. And perhaps if the majority of your occupants would be undergraduate and graduate students, you should reconsider the units with the 4 bedrooms. Also think about the fact that you might be able to find a little bit of a happy medium between 45 spaces and 22. I think it seems as though the parking is excessive, and I'm not sure if you referred to the fact that some of the other units might be using these parking spaces because you're in a deficit, or if I misunderstood that.
No, I mean, I think what we're really looking at that building specifically to the, I think if you add the spaces required for what we're using over on, I'm sorry, the right-hand side, in combination with those, I think we'll do the calculation for you, kind of balance out among those 3 buildings.
This is Pam Rubinoff. I'm wondering if the staff could remind us about the ordinance on the number of unrelated people in a unit, and if that applies in this case as well.
Good question. I'm not sure that applies in this scenario, but I will do my best to try to put my finger on it as we speak.
I just want to make something clear. I think Elise mentioned something about 2 people per bedroom. We don't occupy our units that way. It's 1 person per bedroom unless it's a family. We do have to stay within HUD guidelines based off square footage. So care standpoint, we don't, if we have a 4 bedroom and we have students, we wouldn't put more than 4 students in 1 apartment. That's just not our standard policy. If it's a family, that's a different story.
This is Amy Goins, legal counsel. The special use permit requirement would apply for household occupancy by more than 3 unrelated persons. So if there are more than 3 unrelated persons to occupy 1 unit or more than 1 unit, that special use permit requirement would apply.
Thank you, Amy. You beat me to it.
And that special use permit requirement is 1 parking place per bedroom, correct? One of the requirements.
Yes, you are correct.
1 parking space for each potential occupant.
So then, so clear, if we had 4 bedrooms, we need 4 parking spaces per bedroom. which I think because in the 2 bedrooms, we'd only need the minimum amount of parking. Is that correct?
Right, so you have 40, you're proposing 40 bedrooms and 45 parking spaces.
Yes. So we'd meet the requirement. And that requirement's mandatory.
Correct.
Am I getting it right? I mean, if I just want to know, we'd be required to have at least a minimum number of 40 parks. Is that correct, Elise?
If you get that special, if you're granted the special use permit.
If you're renting for unrelated people.
Yeah.
Kayla and Jay, can you just validate the conversation that we're having here?
Yeah, Chris, let me ask you, when I'm looking at your site plan, I know we have, what do we have? We have 4 bedroom, we have a couple of 2 bedrooms units in here. How many of them are 2 bedroom units?
There are 2 of them, and they sit on the left hand, the building all the way to the left, if you're looking at the property from Kingstown Road. And those single story. And then we have the 2 4 bedrooms in that same building. And there will be 2 on top of that. And then in the other building, you'll have another 1 story for the 4 bedroom that's kind of going perpendicular. And then the 2 4 bedrooms, and that would also be 2 story.
Okay, thanks. I wanted to just confirm because when we're doing the household occupancy, number of bedrooms start to matter.
Yep.
So yes, I would say yes. So for your 2 2-bedroom units, you, based on the policy you're describing where you have 1 occupant per bedroom, you would not be likely seeing more than 2 occupants in those. And so standard requirement per dwelling unit of 2 parking spaces would apply. So I would say yes, for the 2-bedroom units, unless you end up putting a 3rd occupant in one of those bedrooms or something. But as you've discussed it today, it would be a 2 parking space requirement for each of those, and then 1 for each of the potential occupants. So again, under your method of business where there's 1 occupant per bedroom, yes, you basically would have 1 parking space required for every bedroom. Yes, so I would confirm what you all are talking about here is being an accurate calculation.
Amy, this is Steve. Did I understand you correctly that if the 4 unit bedrooms have 4 unrelated people, he's going to need to get a special use permit?
If any of the units have more than 3 unrelated people occupying it, 3 being the maximum permitted without a special use permit, then yes, he would need to seek and obtain that relief.
Amy, just to clarify, I think the zoning ordinance indicates that for all residential zones, and about 1/3 of this property is resident in the residential zone and the remainder of it's in the commercial neighborhood. That's why I was struggling when I was reading it and interpreting what the actual applicability of that would be.
Jay, where is the reference to residential zones? Because that, I mean, regardless of the zone in which it lies, if it's a residential development, the household definition and the maximum 3 unrelated persons would apply.
Okay, it's under B in 504.14, household occupancy by more than 3 unrelated individuals.
I see that, yeah. So that, and you all know that was a recent, meaning within the last 3-4-ish years, amendment to our zoning ordinance. I think that was probably an oversight in drafting. We assumed that residential dwellings would all be in residential zones. My interpretation is this, the 3 unrelated maximum would apply regardless. It would apply to all residential dwellings, no matter what zone they're located in. And to further clarify, if the question came up, well, could I apply for a special use permit to apply to property that was not located in a residential zone? It would be my advice, yes, you could.
And is a special use permit granted by the planning board or the zoning board?
would be granted by the zoning board.
So Chris, the order of things you would expect to see happen for your project here would be,
Mhm.
would get a, I guess in truth, really, it depends on how you have a little bit of leniency here, right? The standard procedure you would follow, knowing what you want to do with the units, you might as well permit it as you want it, so you're not coming to change something. So that's what I'm going to
Sure.
do here, is you'll do this pre-application review tonight. When you file for conceptual master plan, assuming that approval is granted to you by the planning board, you'd go to the planning board, you'd go to the zoning board in between the conceptual master plan and preliminary plan review stages of the planning board to get that special use permit in place.
Okay.
So Lise Torello again. So when you're counting parking spaces and whether they meet the requirement, some of these parking spaces straddle the lot line between this project and the rest of the apartment complex. Is that an issue?
I mean, for us, it's not, but I mean, is it for you?
I guess I'm more asking Jay and Kayla.
Oh, okay.
I don't believe it is. They own the property, they have control of the property next door. Kayla, unless you know of something that jumps out at you, I think it would be appropriate.
I'm muted. Yeah, I'd agree with Jay on that.
Okay, yeah, I just did a quick count and there was 30 something that were actually completely on the subject parcels.
Is there any thinking to the two affordable units? Have you thought about its designation or to be determined later?
No, we would designate 1 4-bedroom and 1 2-bedroom, John.
Okay.
So how would that work if they were all unrelated? Would each of the 4 have to qualify?
Yes, that's the way we typically do it. It's a joint and several lease, and usually we get parents to co-sign if they're undergrads. Graduates, we don't ask for a co-signature.
But if they're undergrads and they're getting parents to co-sign, I'm getting too deep into the weeds on it.
That's okay. It's pretty easy.
But I'm going to pick up what Elise is saying there and say there are inevitably some weeds to get into on that matter.
Sure.
I'm not sure if you have identified, a monitoring agent for affordable housing units that you've worked with in the past to sort of help shepherd you through those responsibilities. But that is a conversation that'll serve you well to figure out how to handle the multiple potential dependents or multiple different income sources you'd need to verify on that. I think a conversation with the monitoring agent will put you in good footing on figuring that out.
Yeah, I know Steve Ost, the guy over in the Newport area, and I was a LIHTC developer for about years, so I'm very familiar with the affordable housing restrictions. And we do 80% AMI over in Portsmouth as well.
Jay and Kayla, I just want to be cognizant of any public member that may have their hand raised that I'm not seeing or would like to make a comment and or question. Do you see anybody?
I do not see anybody now, but again, if you are joining us and you would like to speak, you can raise your hand by either clicking the button at the bottom of your screen that says raise hand, or you can dial *9 to raise your hand. But John, no, I do not see anyone either.
Okay, while we're waiting for potential public input, any other questions or comments or thoughts from the board?
I just have a question as the applicant is, so I think the comments we received tonight really have to do with parking from Steve and Elise. Are there any other comments? We've tried to go ahead and try to make this property assimilate to the total development, cognizant of the fact that we're trying to take advantage of getting people to the bus stop, trying to make sure there's enough parking available, and really improving the curb appeal along Kingston Road. and getting rid of the curb cut. We'll be installing a curb, actual concrete curb on the road to clean that curb appeal up.
This is Maria. Just one other thought is that I'm sure this drawing was just generated not to be specific with regard to the buffering and the landscaping. The light green dots that I'm assuming represent random vegetation would be a little too far apart.
Oh, Maria, I agree 1,000%. I'm more a fan of the giant arborvitaes we plant usually as screening between properties. So I'm sure you'll be able to help us with that.
It's a
Pam
leaf,
here. I appreciate that there's a lot more green there. I think that just makes it for, you know, more amenities for your community members there. So that will be great.
They'll be nice looking buildings. And I think people driving down 108 will be much happier than what's currently there.
Mr. Chairman, it's.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Kenyon.
I was hoping to get some feedback on the waivers, the 100-foot setback requirement, and then also the separation of the buildings, if the board has any feedback on that.
This is Stephen. I have no objection of reducing that 100-foot setback. I think Chris mentioned that in the special management zone for that area, it's bringing it closer to the curb. And as far as the buildings and clustering them, I don't have a problem with that.
And this is John, and I would agree with Steve. I'm thinking about the Dan's Restaurant that we did approve. And the building was, again, we asked the owner to bring the building as close as possible to the street, with the parking being in the rear and to the side of the building. So yeah, that's consistent. I would agree with that.
no lighthouse.
How about buckets of Newport Creamery, though, beer?
Okay, I'm just going to check one more time with Kayla and Jay to see if there's anybody with a hand up or would like to, a public member that would like to comment or provide their thoughts.
I see none at this time.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Kenyon and Mr. Bishu, I think you've got some pretty good feedback here. And regarding the waiver, I think you've got your feedback, Mr. Kenyon, on that. I don't know. I think we're good. Thank you for bringing it forward, and we look forward to seeing a formal application.
John, I just have one last comment. I apologize, I was going to jump in, but because Dan's place had so much public involvement from the community across the street, I don't know if you've reached out to them, because that was quite an extensive conversation for many different public hearings. So I don't know if you have already heard from any of the neighbors in the West Wind, but you might want to, I don't know, well, I'll leave it up to you to reach out to them or not, but they were very, very vocal in Dan's.
Yeah, Pam, this is Steve. I remember a lot of concern from the neighbors across the street, but it seems to me it was more with overflow parking, and people were parking at the edge of the front entrance of that development. I believe it's West Wing or Westwood. Or I imagine he's moving the entrance, actually taking it out and using the Rollins Drive. I don't think it'll be as much of an issue.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of a horse of a different color, but I know that they were very engaged in terms of concerned about when there were parties, concerned about traffic issues, concerned about their neighborhood character. This looks like a wonderful amenity compared to what it is right now. So, and then you're already an existing neighbor. So I'm sure that they would probably look at that and say, okay, you've been a good neighbor so far. But I'm just putting it out there that that was extensive.
Appreciate that, Pam.
Yep.
John will help us circle back around with the right folks.
Great. Any final comments? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bishu,
Thank
and
you.
members of your team. That was very helpful, and we look forward to your formal application.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, we have one additional pre-application concept review and request to combine review stages, major subdivision, Murphy subdivision.
Good evening, members of the board. For the record, I'm Joe Murphy. I'm the owner applicant. Also, for anyone that may be listening, I am a member of the South Kingston Planning Board, and therefore I have appropriately recused myself on this matter. I had sent in the recusal form from Jay, and he should have that. Additionally, earlier in the month, I appeared virtually with the help of Amy from the Rhode Island Ethics to ask for an advisory opinion of whether I could present this project, and we obtained their approval. They didn't have any concerns other than just making sure I recused myself from the project, obviously. So with that said, what I have is a existing lot, which I've owned since about 2005 or so. Currently, my daughter lives on the property. It's an 84,000 square foot lot that's located on South Road. It's approximately across from the Test Hill main entrance. The lot has 50 foot of frontage, or approximately 50 foot of frontage on South Road. The lot's serviced by town water, and it has individual ISDS. The town sewer does not go by that section of South Road. The lot is all upland. There's no wetlands on the site, and there's no wetlands in close proximity to the site. The lot is located in an R30 zoning district. My intent is to divide the lot into two lots, one being approximately 35,000 square foot, and the other being approximately 49,000 square foot. Requesting to use the flexible frontage provision. I believe that it's appropriate. The flexible frontage would allow me to continue to use the existing gravel driveway. It will result in less impervious, and it will keep the aesthetics on South Road just the way they are today. The second lot, which would be created towards the southern portion, that's pretty much not visible from South Road. So the overall appearance from South Road would be totally unchanged. Let's see here. Once divided, the additional lot would remain in the family. So it's my intention to hold on to both lots. As I said, my oldest daughter lives in the front house, where the existing dwelling is, and then I would retain that for another family member for the back portion of that lot. That's pretty much all I have. As part of that, I had talked to John previously, and as part of this, I will do a sewer feasibility study. The soils are suitable for ISDS.
Joe, you indicated that sewers do not go to the property, correct?
That is
That's
correct.
correct.
They're about 900 feet to the north, up at the Potter's Woods subdivision, Windmill Drive. And they're quite a ways to the south.
There is a existing right-of-way to the lot behind me, Assessors Plat 39-2, Lot 12, which is a relatively large parcel. The gardeners who run the farmers market are back there, and they have quite a few greenhouses back in that area. But So that goes right across the very northern part. That will remain just as it is.
I think that was my only concern, Joe, was the clarity of that right of way to that back lot, that there was no issues that would be caused with it by that. Does he own the right of way, or do you own that right of way?
That's actually on my land. He has a right of way. I believe the deed calls out for a 14-foot wide right of way. It's pretty well marked. It's a gravel drive. It's just probably about 14 feet wide. So
as long as that's clearly defined in the new deeds, so there's no issue with access, I don't have a problem with what you're trying to do here.
yeah, that is the right of way is in the deed.
Joe, this is Kayla, if I can quickly. So it looks to me like for parcel A, you'll likely need to put together a new easement so that looking at it, it looks to me like parcel B is the one that it will retain the easement and the existing gravel drive. So I'm imagining you're also just going to, in the deed for parcel A, hold in an easement for parcel A to keep using that as well. Is that your plan?
That's my plan. I will do that.
Elise here. I have no problem with this at all. Looks totally fine to me.
Pam here. I have no problem at all as well.
Maria here. Yes, I agree with the other board members.
Okay. Any further comments or question to Joe? Okay, hearing none. Nope.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just as a reminder, Mr. Murphy has asked, this is Jay Parker, by the way, has asked to combine the next stages of review.
Before we get to that one, can and I'm looking at that, I forgot to ask about public comment, so I want to make sure if you can check the participants. Again, Kayla and Joe, if anybody has a hand up or you see in the queue that is wishing to call in and make a comment, please let us know.
Absolutely. So at this point, I do not see anyone who has indicated they want to speak, but just in case anyone on our call does want to speak, the way to do that is to raise your hand. If you're looking at the screen, there's an icon at the bottom you can push. Or if you are dialing by telephone, you're going to want to dial *9.
All right, while we wait for that, go ahead, Jay. You had a comment about the second request.
Oh, I just wanted to remind the board that Mr. Murphy did submit a request to ask the board to combine the next stages of review, conceptual master plan and preliminary.
I would be willing to make that motion once we hear from the public, if there are any comments.
I'll point out we still do not have anyone appearing to make public comment, and actually looking at the list of attendees in the room, I think we might be safe to move on.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll make the motion to combine both stages of review for the Murphy subdivision.
So we have a motion from Maria to combine both stages of review. Do we have a second?
Second, Elise.
Second from Elise. Any further discussion? Pam, can you do a tabulation of the vote?
John Riondo,
Aye.
Peter DiStefano,
Aye.
Maria Mack,
Aye.
Steve Demasi,
Aye.
Elise Torello,
Aye.
and Pam Rubinoff. Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it.
Thank you.
Very good, Joe. Okay, we have reports and special items. Update from planning staff and special legal counsel. Any items?
Hi, Amy Goins. You all received the memo from me with the governor's executive order 20-25. That expires on May 15th, which I believe is the expiration of the current statewide state of emergency. I don't have inside info on what will happen after that. but I think it's likely that these virtual meetings are here to stay for quite some time. We've heard about the planned phased reopening, whereby even in phase 3 of the planned reopening of the state economy, gatherings would be limited to 50 people. It's not clear to me that a gathering for a municipal meeting would be considered a social gathering in the same way that a wedding or a festival would, but I think it's fair to say we have been ahead of the curve in implementing the virtual meetings. It's working so far. It's working here. It's working in the zoning board. And by working, I mean that people are able to call in and ask questions just as they did tonight. People are able to state objections. People are able to view everything that the board members view. So we will continue. Staff has put an incredible amount of work into this, and I know they will continue to do that. We'll continue to keep you updated.
Thank you. Kayla or Jay?
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on the executive order piece to say that a piece that changed in the executive order that Amy's memo pointed out and the thing that we were under the initial executive order for allowing virtual meetings, we were questioning is what is that essential purpose? And so that originally the first executive order came out required that boards be meeting for an essential purpose, and that was a term that there was great debate about what was and was not, and there wasn't a lot of clarity. The new executive order removes that. And so that I point that out to tell you all that is helpful to us all as we move forward applications that you all do not have a particular deadline under, or to be moving forward some of our other projects during this time. As Amy said, working under these virtual meetings is probably not ending on the 14th of May. It's likely going to be our new normal for a while. And so the ability for us to work through our changes to regulation, new policy crafting will become important too. And so we now have that ability to do that in confidence. So we will be holding your work session in 2 weeks with great topics for discussion at that. We'll keep moving forward, but just so you all know, we'll from here on sort of try and settle back into a new normal of routines using Zoom for both our sort of forward-looking meetings and our decision-making ones.
Kayla, may I ask a quick question? Amy again. You had announced a few weeks ago that you, and this may have been when the essential purpose requirement was still in effect. Is it your intent to try to restart the comp planning adoption process?
Yes, it is. It is. That I will tell you all that is something that I struggled with because of the essential purpose piece, to be honest with you, was I didn't want us to take something we've put this much effort into as the comp plan and then see us open up concerns about Open Meetings Act concerns and whatnot on something based on the virtual meetings and a debate about essential purpose that seemed sort of hot to happen. Now I do not feel that same concern now. I feel confident in us moving that forward. I'm going to add to that. I feel confident with us doing that from a policy piece, but also knowing that these meetings do seem to be working. As members of the planning board might have tuned into, the town council held multiple budget hearings and actually a budget adoption via Zoom that ended up being meetings with a lot of discussion, a lot of engagement, a lot of back and forth, and they went forward productively and successfully. And so I have every confidence we can do the same with our projects.
Thank you, Kayla.
Could I just add a thought that I had with regard to virtual meetings? As it appears that we'll be using this format for quite some time, I was just thinking about, in the event that a particular project requires a site visit, given the issue with social distancing and that some sites may not lend themselves well to that, it might be helpful in certain circumstances to ask an applicant to perhaps go onto a site, use their phone, take a video that shows the basics of the site, And then that could be posted to our agenda, which would be, I think, very helpful for us and the public as well. So just a thought.
I think that's a really neat idea. It's a good way to pull a virtual site visit together.
Amy, how would that be perceived under, could that be done under the emergency regulations that we're there, that we're under currently?
I think what Maria is suggesting, and tell me if I misunderstood Maria, but I like the sound of what you're suggesting, because to me, you're not talking about a meeting. You're talking about a piece of evidence that would be submitted to the record in advance or, you know, during the planning board's review process. You're not talking about convening a virtual site visit. I don't know how that would be, that would be possible. I mean, but I think what you're asking is, just as they draw up a plan, you'd be asking for them to take some kind of a video overview, whether it's a phone or a drone, of the property.
Exactly, yes.
So that would be a very good substitute, I think. Of course, you know, you'd have to ensure that they showed you what you wanted to see.
I'll point out that I used to do this regularly in Coventry to encourage people to supplement the required application materials with photographs or even videos in order to avoid getting to a meeting, then having the board say, oh, I think we need to do a site visit, and putting off the approval process for another cycle. So
That's a very good point.
Yep. Any further comments, thoughts before we adjourn?
Maria here, a volunteer for the TRC before we adjourn.
Well, I think you did 2 last ones, so thank you.
I did,
for
so
that.
it's not me.
I think we need to pass the buck somewhere else. And I was going to ask, what's the next date that you see that happen, that will occur, Kayla?
I'm going to look to Jay on this one.
That would be May 13th,
Which is a
Wednesday.
Wednesday?
Wednesday, May 13th.
I could do it.
Who's that, Pam?
Oh, I'm sorry, Pam.
Yeah, okay. All right. And Maria, no offense, but you've done your share.
I was asking the question, not volunteering.
Oh, okay. All right, so we have Pam for May 13th.
We going for 9 a.m.?
Yes.
And those are all virtual as well, I would imagine.
Yes, yes, they are.
Okay, thank you, Pam. All right, can I get a vote to adjourn?
So moved by Steve.
Steve, second.
Maria, second.
Maria, second. Discussion. Hearing none. Pam, do you want to do the tabulation?
Sure. John Riondo.
Aye.
Joe Murphy.
Aye. Kayla, if you can stay on, I want to ask you a question after.
Yep.
Aye.
Elise Torello.
Aye.
Steve Tomasi.
Aye.
Maria Mack.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Pam. Aye.
Okay, thanks, everybody. We are adjourned.
Good night,
Okay.
everyone.
Worked
See you
out.
later.
Thanks.
Kayla,
Yes.
Affordable Housing Commission.
Yes.
I haven't heard any, are they having the meetings? I haven't,
Yeah, so we ended up skipping the month of April because April, we were not holding advisory committee meetings.
okay.
Jen Kruger and I spoke last week. We'll be holding the May meeting. I think you saw the multi-household survey go out. So our hope is that at the May meeting, at the normal standing date for the AHC, we're going to have some preliminary survey results on that, and we'll be pulling together the Affordable Housing Collaborative then.
Well, can you make sure I get the Zoom request the meeting request for that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right. Thank you both. Have a good night.
Good night.
Kayla, you want me to stop the recording or do you want to do it?
Oh, I'm scared. I'll do it. All right. Have a good night.
Hey, listen, sorry about dropping the ball on that 3 unrelated. They asked the question about it on that and I'm sitting there saying on a multi-household detached or apartment complex like that. And then it dawned on me that the whole URI discussion never really came up with me. I always looked at it as a apartment unit.
Yeah. No,
And to me, it's like, it's very strange. I think it probably shouldn't be included in that because that apartment unit now has to come back every 3 years to get renewed for the special use permit and verifying the people that live there. And you might have turnover and stuff like that. It's just a little odd. I was kind of taken back by it.
sure. Yeah. Maybe we'll talk about it. Let's talk about that when we're not live streaming on Clerk Base.
True. Okay.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.